Without much delay, we'll move on to our last session prior to lunch, which is a discussion on local and focal treatment in retinoblastoma by Dr. Fairuz. She is an ocular oncologist and the director of Hora Specialty Eye Care in Bangalore. Dr. Fairuz.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dear Sunil and the entire Focon team, thank you very much for this kind invitation. And I consider it as a privilege to be part of this great team of pediatric oncologists and this extremely well-conducted conference here in Bangalore. So I'm going to talk about retinoblastoma. I'm a retinoblastoma specialist. I have no financial disclosure, and these are my affiliations. And this talk, let it be a tribute to all the stars, all the heroes of retinoblastoma who has survived as far as life is concerned, the eye is concerned, and vision is concerned. And I always consider the pediatric oncologist, the radiation oncologist, the interventional neuroradiologist, the geneticist, and the pathologist as my strongest pillar in the management of retinoblastoma. Thanks to everyone. It is estimated that 8,000 cases are reported per year worldwide, that of retinoblastoma, and the unfortunate news is that the majority of the case is reported in India and China, which accounts for around 2,000 reported cases per year. The good news about retinoblastoma is more than 98% of children can have eye salvage and almost 100% life salvage if a protocol-based management is followed. I'm going to take you through this journey of this child. I'm sure Sunil remembers her. This is a 6-year-old female who presented with a unilateral retinoblastoma, as you can see here, with a white reflex in the right eye. So when she presented to us, this was how the fundus picture looked like. The entire eye was filled with a tumor. There was no visualization of the optic disc, the fundus, no visualization of the macula, and you can see all these vitreous seeds which is spread all over the vitreous over here. So now the question is whether to salvage this unilateral eye or just enucleate it. Well, after discussing in detail regarding the risks and benefits with the parent, the child being a girl child, the father wanted to save the eye. So we went ahead. We treated it a little bit aggressively with a high-dose chemotherapy because of the severe intraocular disease. After chemotherapy, it did settle down, but as you can see here, there is a ciliary body component there, which is quite dangerous for systemic metastasis. So what we did was to treat the ciliary body component also. So after systemic chemotherapy, cryotherapy, laser therapy, injections over the eye and inside the eye, we did a plaque brachytherapy. And this is how it was completely regressed after all these treatment. I'm going to take you to the next picture over here. So this is how a plaque brachytherapy is done. We have iodine plugs, we have ruthenium plugs, and it's a focal therapy of radiating focal tumors in the eye, be it retinoblastoma or any other intraocular tumors. So this child received 6 cycles of systemic chemotherapy, a high dose, cryotherapy, diode laser therapy, periocular topotecan 3 injections, intravitreal injections of 6, and plaque brachytherapy. You can see that the tumor is completely regressed. There is clarity of fundus. I'm going to show you this magic over here. So now the optic disc is completely visible. This is the fovea, revising your MBBS times, and she has 20 by 20 vision from an eye which was kind of unsalvageable. With a multiple focal treatment along with systemic chemotherapy, we could salvage the eye as well as the vision. So just brushing on the classification for you to understand what I'm going to speak further. We classify into different groups. It's very easy. A, B, C, D, and E. A stands for small a, anything less than 3 millimeters in size, as you can see here. B are big, B for big, and a bubble around. Subretinal fluid will start accumulating. Anything more than 3 millimeters is B. Now C are those with seeds. Apart from the tumor, they will have seeds which is subretinal, or it could be vitreous seeds. And these are confined seeds, which is less than 3 millimeters away from the tumor. And D are again with seeds, but which are more diffuse, which is more than 3 millimeters away from the tumor. And this is how it looks like. So you can see this tiny, tiny seeds over here, apart from the large tumors. And these are diffuse vitreous seeding, which is present in the group D. E are those eyes with extensive tumors, which occupies more than 50 to 75% of the globe, which presents with neovascular glaucoma, massive intraocular hemorrhage, even sometimes with physical eyes, aseptic orbital cellulitis, and these comes under group E. Imaging is also very, very important in order to stage. So that was a grouping, that's a clinical grouping, and then we stage the children also. There are situations where you're not able to visualize the nerve in the macula, so we take an MRI and visualize whether there is any optic nerve extension. Now, these are the bad things. The child had undergone a systemic chemotherapy. The child had a history of a fall. We did an MRI, and there was a pinealoblastoma which was hiding in there. Absolutely a sad situation, and that's exactly what the MRI is also reflecting. It gives a sad face over here. So radiology is also very, very important, and I'm sure as a pediatric oncologist, you all do bone marrow biopsy and CSF cytology in these patients. So again, we have a staging system, and this is how we stage it. I'm not going into the detail. Well, now going into the management, how do we apply the equipments and things that we have into retinoblastoma? These things have come into vogue in the recent past. In 1996, a bunch of clinical oncologists from Canada, from USA, from London and France, they all got in together and they introduced the role of systemic chemotherapy into retinoblastoma. Before, it was treated as enucleation. Every child got enucleated. These are the children of 80s and 90s where they get enucleated and radiated. We don't use radiation anymore as a primary management of retinoblastoma. Now we do systemic chemotherapy. Systemic chemotherapy alone doesn't work with adjuvant focal therapy, which I was talking about, and a targeted chemotherapy, that is intraarterial chemotherapy, which we will talk about. So it's the same pictures that I showed you here, group A, group B, and group C. How do we salvage? This is after chemotherapy and focal laser therapies and cryotherapy. We are able to salvage the eye, salvage the vision, salvage the eye, salvage the vision. So A, B, and C is not difficult to treat. It's very easy to treat. Then comes the group D and E. D is definitely difficult because it's a vitreous. As you all know, systemic chemotherapy concentration reaching the vitreous is much, much less when compared to the tumor. So it's very difficult to treat the vitreous disease. In fact, this group D was saved, eye and vision salvage. Well, we couldn't salvage this eyes because it was very, very extensive despite many treatment. And group E, extensive tumor extending up to the ciliary body, was enucleated. But there are instances where we are able to salvage group E eyes also. So this was a 3-month-old baby presenting with unilateral retinoblastoma. Abracadabra, you have complete regression of the tumor after 3 cycles of systemic chemotherapy. Well, she needed adjuvant laser therapy around the edges of the tumor to have in this situation after 3 cycles of systemic chemotherapy. So these are my friends in my management of retinoblastoma, very, very basic. We use indirect ophthalmoscopy, we have lens, we have ultrasound B-scan, we have a tonometer to measure the pressure, we have a RETCam imaging to document, and well, I'm not a great artist, but we always document it in detail in order to assess the progression and recurrences in these patients. More than anything, this is my right hand and my left hand in my management of retinoblastoma. Of course, the pediatric oncologist is very precious for me for the systemic chemotherapy, but then the complete control of the tumor is taken care after focal therapies, and this is the transpupillary thermotherapy infrared diode laser unit that we use, which has very minimal side effects and focal side effects over the retina and the choroid after application of this specific laser, which is a diode laser. Cryotherapy, I'm sure you have all seen it, and these are the retinal cryoprobes that we have of various millimeter, 2.5 to 3.5 millimeters, depending upon the size of the tumor. We use these probes to treat it. Well, so this is our EUA OR. We do indirect ophthalmoscopy under general anesthesia in all these patients, primary visit as well as in all follow-ups and RETCam imaging. So since I told you about the grouping, just showing you one case over here. What do you think is a group? A, B, C, D, E, or E? C? Is there a seed? Okay, I'm going to outline this for you. So this is the tumor actually. You can see a fluffy tumor, you know. And this is actually the subretinal fluid all around it. Actually, it's a group BI. Okay, yeah. How did we save it? Systemic chemotherapy the entire tumor. So this you can see it is occupying the entire macular area. If you want to revise your ophthalmology, MBBS, nerve, adjacent to the nerve, abutting the nerve, the entire macular area. Can you see this? The regression pattern of the tumor. It has regressed above the fovea here after chemotherapy. And then we do this is like a laser treated area, but we are very careful in treating this area. So we don't go with the laser over there if I intend to save the vision. So this is a child where this eye was enucleated because of an extensive tumor presenting at 2 months of age with optic nerve extension. So enucleated eyeball left, and this eye that you see is the only seeing eye that the baby has. So my prime importance as a retinoblastoma specialist is not only saving his life, he has to live a life and he has to live and see. So we could salvage the vision also with a focal treatment. Similar case, a large tumor. So these are well differentiated tumors. It doesn't calcify. It has a fish flesh appearance where it really doesn't respond to chemotherapy. Well, it does respond. These are called well-differentiated tumors. But you get this fleshy mass at the end of the treatment. So this is after systemic chemotherapy. We lasered it, fovea spared, and that is how the regression pattern is. So it's very, very important to have an adjuvant treatment. It's not only as a primary treatment and adjuvant treatment. So this is a recurrent tumor after treatment of the retinoblastoma systemic chemotherapy laser. So even for recurrences, we repeat the lasers and other focal therapy for complete regression. Very interesting case that I want to share with you is, we often know that retinoblastoma occurs in the fundus. So this is the anterior segment of the eye. So this child presented as a case of uveitis. Lots of FNACs done, lots of biopsies done. Finally, it was concluded when this mass started arising in the anterior chamber that it was retinoblastoma. And well, so the fundus was absolutely fine. UBM, ultrasound biomicroscope, shows an angle lesion, no lesion absolutely in the retina. This was a case of retinoblastoma. So the only thing that she received was systemic chemotherapy 6 cycles along with the plaque brachytherapy. This is an iodine plaque that you see here. And well, this is how it looks like, absolutely fine. So focal therapy plays a major, major role. Now, as I told you, management of retinoblastoma with vitreous seed is very, very dicey. It's very difficult for us. So we have tried everything, high-dose chemotherapy, periocular topotecan, but as you can see here, the eye salvage rate ranges from somewhere from 22% to 77%. So this is the right eye of a child and the left eye of the same child, bilateral retinoblastoma. Well, as you can see here, vitreous seeds are there, lots of vitreous seeds, and this is how both the eyes were salvaged. So this eye, this child, despite the eye salvage, after that, okay, so we also do patching treatment, and she can actually see with the left eye, which was the worst eye that she had after focal treatment going ahead. So the magic band that we got recently in 2012, which was introduced, was intravitreal chemotherapy, going inside the vitreous and injecting. So the most commonly used chemotherapeutic agents are melphalan and topotecan. I feel and find topotecan safe in my hand because the toxicity as compared to melphalan, topotecan has quite minimal. So this is how we go ahead. So it's a 32 gauge needle which is introduced through the pars plana because we don't want to go here. It can cause retinal detachment. Pars plana is more adhered, so it doesn't cause detachment. And we make sure we go at least 3 clock hours away from the vitreous seeding. Poking an eye with a needle full of tumor is not easy, right? So there is, and these retinoblastoma cells are very cohesive tumors. You can actually cause an extraocular extension. Along with the needle track, the tumor can spread outside. So you have to be extremely careful in these situations. And this is one of the cases where the child has undergone chemotherapy, maximum dosage as much as possible. This is actually not the tumor. There's a vitreous seed which is sitting as clouds over the tumor. So what was done was injection of intravitreal melphalan. 6 cycles, well, that's the magic of intravitreal. It just melts the tumor away inside the eye, and this is how responsive it is. We have evaluated all the intravitreal agents which has been used so far. It started with thiotepa, which is no more used. Methotrexate is no more used. Melphalan and topotecan is the agents that is preferred. So this is a child. This is an artificial eye, right eye. Okay, one eye enucleated when he was 2 years of age. At 13 years of age, after chemotherapy and radiotherapy, at that time, he recurred in the left eye, only one eye. It was not a tumor recurrence. There was a very small tumor recurrence, but it started spitting a lot of vitreous seeds. As you can see here, one eye, the only one eye the child has completely engulfed with vitreous seeds all around 360 degree. This was after injection of topotecan, 4 injections, the entire vitreous seed. So he didn't even require systemic chemotherapy for a recurrence. It was only the focal treatment of the vitreous with the intravitreal chemotherapy. It does have risk of extraocular extension. We have to be very, very careful as ophthalmologists. So there are safety enhanced techniques that we use. As you can see here, this is the injection site. Even before withdrawing the needle, we go ahead and do the cryotherapy, a triple freeze thaw cryotherapy. So if at all there is an external seeding of the tumor, it is taken care of. There's a good saline wash, and then we also jiggle the eye so that the chemotherapeutic agent is not focally concentrated, it's concentrated diffusely. So these are the, so we did find very good response to intravitreal melphalan and topotecan. Next comes the intra-arterial chemotherapy. Well, it is basically a direct introduction of chemotherapeutic agents into the ophthalmic artery. So this has kind of superseded systemic chemotherapy in the West, but systemic chemotherapy has proven to be the gold standard in the developing countries, especially in India, which is very, very affordable for our patients with financial constraints. So I'm just going to show you a quick video about this targeted therapy of retinoblastoma. Through the French catheter, needle is introduced through the femoral artery, aorta, internal carotid artery. You have the ophthalmic artery over here. At the ostium, it is passed, and with angiographically and fluoroscopically, it is confirmed in position. And after confirmation of the catheter, chemotherapeutic agents like melphalan, carboplatin, and topotecan is directly injected to it. So you all know about chemoresistance. You might be wondering, what do I do when this children comes with chemoresistance? So this is an option where you're using completely different drug and a different technique where it's going and hitting the tumor directly. So this is my interventional neuroradiologist team. I don't do the procedure. I decide the dose, plan the medications, and then the child is shifted with the interventional neuroradiologist. So they perform the procedure, and even a neurosurgeon performs the procedure. For them, it seems to be very easy. The only issue is titration of the chemotherapeutic agents, because melphalan can cause local toxicity. It's powdery. If you don't filter it, it can go and block all the vessels in the eye, causing vision-threatening complications like vitreous hemorrhage, everything. So that is more important, and it has to be a slow infusion. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead. Is it effective? Yes, we had seen really good effect with this. 2 sessions of intraarterial chemotherapy, complete tumor regress. 2 sessions again in a group B, complete regression. These are the recurrences. After 2 sessions, it has regressed. So recurrences seeds are treated with intraarterial chemotherapy. Similar recurrences treated. So we have evaluated the outcome of comparing chemoreduction and intraarterial chemotherapy, which is like a targeted chemotherapy. So we have found the major difference is in the group D eyes, where initially we used to salvage only 47% of eyes. Now with intraarterial chemotherapy, which is a targeted therapy, 94%, a jump of 50%. So this is our series from United States of America, and this is our series from China, which is much more, like 271 eyes. So safety profile, this is the youngest patient that we have performed intraarterial chemotherapy, 4 weeks, where the tumor was detected by an obstetrician on ultrasound. Immediately after birth, a large tumor in the left eye, 4 weeks intraarterial chemotherapy, and this is after 1 year of follow-up, very stable tumor. And this is the oldest patient that we have treated. So this is actually a retinocytoma, which actually reactivated with lots of vitreous seeds, as you can see here. She, 15-year-old, you don't want her to go through the systemic chemotherapy cycle, to school going, 10th standard. So she received 2 sessions of intraarterial chemotherapy, and it was treated. It does have complication. Most common is ptosis and lid edema, but these are the vision-threatening complications. So it does have a learning curve. It has to be done by an expert who is, well acquainted with the procedure. So we always think that targeted chemotherapy, the systemic complications are much, much less. We do see neutropenia in these patients with targeted chemotherapy also, and as you can see here, even alopecia in the region where the arterial catheterization has been done. Just to highlight this, whatever newer treatment that we have in our hand, and we are all proud of it, we go aggressive sometimes in treatment, but always we need to draw a line. We need to know where we have to draw a line and enucleate. So this child was treated with intraarterial chemotherapy. One session, well, referred to me for further. There is lots of swelling in the eye. It's not looking nice, right? So immediately an enucleation was planned, enucleation was done. This is an enucleated eyeball. Radiologically undetected optic nerve extension, all right? Histopathological correlation. So there was an optic nerve extension. So although we have all these advanced and modern technologies and equipments in our hand, we have to be very, very careful regarding choosing the patient and choosing what to give which patient. So regarding another focal treatment, not really focal, going to talk about external beam radiation or the stereotactic radiotherapy. How do we apply in retinoblastoma? We don't use it for intraocular disease at all because of the long-term complications that we have seen, osteosarcoma and other cancers. So we do classify them primary, secondary when it's a recurrence after enucleation, accidental when you poke an eye for a cataract or a vitreous surgery without knowing that it's a case of retinoblastoma, overt where it's like a surprise at the table on enucleation where there is thickening of the nerve and extraocular extension, and of course microscopic. So we have all evaluated that how it has been treated and how the treatment has evolved from the past. Initially it was only exenteration, 100% mortality. Then they tried to combine it with radiotherapy and adjuvant chemotherapy, still 70% mortality. So there was a need of a sandwich therapy where we were inspired from the treatment of breast cancer, lung cancer, and renal cell carcinoma. So this was what applied for orbital retinoblastoma in order to improve the survival and the life and reduce the morbidity of these children. So we go ahead giving high dose chemotherapy 3 to 6 cycles, and then we radiologically evaluate the child for the regression of the orbital component. When the treating specialist is convinced that the orbital component is regressed, we enucleate with a clear margin of the optic nerve, which is very, very important. Then an external beam radiotherapy in the form of stereotactic radiotherapy is given, and a completion of high dose chemotherapy of 12 cycles. So in our study of 40 cases with multimodal, intensive multimodal treatment protocol, that's what we call it, we had 90% survival from 100% mortality to 70% mortality. So these are few of the children that we had treated. As you can see here, large tumor. After 3 cycles, you can see the regression, and the eye goes for phthisis, and it is at this point that we enucleate and further treat them. This was a tumor extending up to the apex, where there is a high risk of CSF and CNS extension. 9 cycles of systemic chemotherapy, complete regression of the optic nerve component, enucleation, and the child is doing fine. After enucleation, this is an implant kept inside, recurrence, tumor, radiation, protocol, and this is how they are. So the survival in these patients we have found 90%. So I conclude here that systemic chemotherapy, well, of course, is definitely a big magic band and a boon in our hand, but it's not adequate. We need focal treatment like diode laser therapy, cryotherapy, intravitreal chemotherapy, and the treatment in retinoblastoma has been progressing. There are newer advances, and I just took this opportunity to introduce to you as pediatricians who are dealing with these kids on the first line, just to make you aware of these things that we do. So the mission in retinoblastoma has always been saving life as a primary goal, but well, we always want them to live and see. So that has been the mission. Thank you very much for your patient listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fairouz, for that interesting session. Any questions?
If you're not hungry.
Yeah.
Compare intra versus intra-arterial, which is better? What is the cost involved?
Yes, so effect-wise, taking into consideration the systemic complications and the local effect, because it's a direct delivery of the chemotherapeutic agent, intra-arterial chemotherapy would be better. And we have also seen in various studies where they have evaluated the tumor recurrence. So tumor recurrence with systemic chemotherapy in a study, a very good study from USA, was 24%, but with intra-arterial chemotherapy was just 3%. Now, going on to the price, yes, so that is the biggest challenge that we face in India. So systemic chemotherapy completing 1 cycle, I'm sure Sunil is around here, it would cost around 50,000, right? But
No, intraocular versus intra-arterial chemotherapy.
intraocular. Well, intraocular is just an adjuvant. Intraocular is not a primary treatment. Intraocular is just adjuvant. Intraocular is given along with systemic chemotherapy. It's not a primary treatment at all. So yeah, but intraarterial chemotherapy is quite expensive. So intraocular, if you want to know the price involved, every injection would cost the melphalan price and then injection price, which would come around 6,000 per injection. Intraarterial chemotherapy per session will come to 1.2 lakhs. It's basically the catheter which costs, which is around 80,000. We cannot do anything about it. Yeah, probably if it comes to be the most commonly used procedure, the prices might come down. So most of my intraarterial chemotherapy is not, the series is not from India. 95% of my Indian patients go for systemic chemotherapy and 98% of my Chinese patients goes for intraarterial chemotherapy. Yeah, the cost is high. And intraocular is only adjuvant, it's not primary.
What is your experience?
Yes, ma'am.
Say in bilateral retinoblastoma, many of these parents, they go to all alternative therapies, and some things they apply, some things they have orally, and they'll end up with a lot of inflammatory changes. And it gets so difficult at times to distinguish between this inflammatory changes component and the active tumor when they present to you. And this is a very common scenario in a girl child with bilateral retinoblastoma. So are there any indicators, or how do you approach this situation?
Right, yeah.
I currently have one child with bilateral retinoblastoma. They went to Hakim, and it was so, when the child had so much of painful eyes, and that's how they landed up.
The culprit here is not the Hakim, nor the alternative medicine. Well, personally, I don't believe in alternative medicine. Why that inflammation happened is not because of the treatment that she got. Inflammation in retinoblastoma, which can even simulate an orbital cellulitis. I have had children who have been treated for orbital cellulitis, but it's actually an intraocular tumor inside. So when there is a large, big tumor inside the eyeball, it undergoes necrosis, like spontaneous necrosis, because the vascularity is not adequate for the growth of the tumor. So when there is a spontaneous necrosis, there is lots of inflammation. So they can present initially with just a preseptal cellulitis look, like an eyelid edema and congestion of the conjunctiva, and then comes the orbital cellulitis kind of a picture. That means it is a progressing large retinoblastoma inside. So we do treat the inflammation like steroids. We start them on systemic chemotherapy because we know anyway the child is going for enucleation. After everything subsides, and it is safe for us to go and enucleate because these are large eyeball, there is a chance for perforation. So once it is shrunken, and most of the time this eye goes with phthisis, then we enucleate them and continue and complete the course of systemic chemotherapy. So there is no chance of systemic metastasis after evaluating the histopathology.
But when you do the enucleation and if there are no pathological risk factors, then will you avoid, like if you have orbital cellulitis, is the radiotherapy a must?
No.
Or further adjuvant chemotherapy must, based on St. Jude's criteria, if there are none?
Yeah, so systemic chemotherapy, which we call as adjuvant chemotherapy in retinoblastoma after enucleation, is based on certain histopathological risk factors, as you correctly pointed out. But then when you have already given a systemic chemotherapy to a child, you're kind of downstaging the tumor. So then your histopathology don't hold true. So you're going with the notion of whatever the child presented with. So there is a clinical risk factor of systemic metastasis. So you started with chemo, 3 cycles, enucleated, irrespective of the fact that whether the histopathology is positive or negative, you complete 6 cycles. Now, application of radiotherapy are very specific in retinoblastoma after enucleation. If there is an extrascleral extension, scleral invasion, and optic nerve transection positivity. Optic nerve can be laminar, it can be post-laminar, and the transection. So if the transection is positive, radiotherapy is a must. Otherwise, after chemotherapy, enucleation, radiotherapy doesn't have a role. Yeah.
That's fine. Thank you for the nice presentation. Two quick questions. How do you choose between plaque brachytherapy versus transpupillary thermotherapy or laser for early? And the second question is, I saw in one of your slides, you had a disease extending along the optic nerve to the apex. In that patient, you did chemo, surgery, held on, had a recurrence, then radiated. So would that be a standard?
He didn't
treatment?
have a recurrent orbital retinoblastoma.
Yeah. So my question is, if a patient responds to chemotherapy, where you had disease extending to the apex, you did chemotherapy and resected, the surgical margin was negative, would you recommend post-op RT in that?
Yes, all orbital retinoblastoma,
Okay.
anything extending beyond the eyeball,
Yeah.
be it in the orbit, the optic nerve,
Yeah.
we always radiate. Radiation, that's what I told about the intensive multimodal treatment. Chemotherapy, enucleate after regression, radiotherapy, complete 12 cycles of
But
chemotherapy.
in case you have optic nerve extension, that means plony, without, and you do surgery without chemotherapy, margins are negative.
No, we always
In them,
give chemo.
you would
No,
still-
We still give chemo because we want to reduce
What about
it.
radiation?
Chemo reduce it.
What about
No, so we chemo reduce it, surgically resect it, but then again you're not 100% sure whether there can be any surgical microscopic residual. So then you radiate it.
you would?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now going on to your first question was regarding
How do you choose between plaque versus?
plaque and plaque versus so plaque we usually do for solitary tumors. Like if it's a tumor after systemic chemotherapy, if it's not responded and it's one single tumor, we do plaque brachytherapy, and also depends upon the size. Like diameter, tumor diameter, which is like anything more than 5 millimeters, where or maybe 6 millimeters, which is not treatable with thermotherapy. So always my first attempt would be laser therapy. If I feel, well, it's too big for laser therapy and it's one single tumor sitting in there, then it's a plaque. But the same eye, if there is multiple tumors, then it's always laser, because plaque doesn't help. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks for your patient listening. Thanks once again, Sunil. Thank you, everyone.